It has been called one of the most amazing events in the history of humanity, a time of peace on a battlefield with goodwill towards all. Soldiers were snared deep in the trenches on the front lines of Europe during the First World War. It was winter, and the harsh weather could only be compared to the harsh reality of war. Christmas was at hand, and the message of Christmas, peace and hope, would briefly overcome calloused hearts in human conflict. The newly elected Pope, Benedict XV, had already suggested a ceasefire for the Christmas season, but it had been rejected by both sides as impossible. Nevertheless, on Christmas Eve, 1914, the impossibility became a reality, not by officials or governmental agreement, but as an unofficial truce declared by the soldiers themselves. German soldiers had cut down a Christmas tree, and with the tradition of that day, lit it with candles. But instead of keeping it in the trenches, the Germans lifted it out of the trench and placed it on the battlefield. The Germans began to place signs in broken English reading, "You no fight, we no fight." The British responded with handmade signs proclaiming, "Merry Christmas." A few British soldiers began to sing a carol they knew their German counterparts would recognize, "Silent Night." As the words were sung in English, the Germans joined singing the song in their native language.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, alles schläft, einsam wacht, nur das traute, hochheilige Paar, holder Knabe im lockigen Haar, schlaf in himmlischer Ruhe, schlaf in himmlischer Ruhe.
When the song ended, soldiers from both sides began to climb out of their trenches with cries of, "Don't shoot!" and "We don't want to kill you." Both groups met in the middle of what was once a no-man's land. They exchanged names and shook hands. They showed photos from home and offered each other chocolates, souvenirs, and whatever else they could share. A group of Scottish and German soldiers placed their hats as goalposts and played a game of soccer, with the Germans winning by a score of 3-2. For a brief time, there was no war. There was only peace. Sadly, it was short-lived. Word spread to headquarters, which ordered that the truce must end and the war must resume. After all, no one had ordered peace. So German and British officers followed their orders and brought their troops back to their own sides. The officers from both sides stood atop of their trenches, saluted one another, and fired shots into the air, signifying that the war would resume. But for a brief moment in the middle of World War I, there was peace on earth and goodwill toward men, just as the host of angels had proclaimed